Hey guys, and welcome to this week's episode of Bear Archery's Hunting 101 podcast, where I am joined by Shane Mowery, the Bone Maniac, and Jim Hoffman from Hoffman Boots. We talk about all things feet. I am a firm believer that if you prioritize your feet, you will last longer on the mountain, you'll last longer in the tree stand, you'll be more comfortable, ultimately resulting in more success. So we talk about how to select boots, what to look for in boots, how your boots should fit, how you should take care of your boots. But we also talk about just some general practices on the mountain to take care of your feet. That way you stay more comfortable, you can stay longer, and ultimately be more successful. Guys, I hope that you enjoy this episode. As always, it's brought to you by our phenomenal friends over at ScentLock, which I must add, that if we're talking feet, you've got to talk about ScentLock's merino wool socks. You pair those with a good pair of boots and your feet will be more comfortable. Go check out ScentLock and their sock line. Guys, thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy.
Welcome to Bear Archery's Hunting 101 podcast, where hunters new and old come to learn and find inspiration from stories of hunts gone by. Everyone is welcome to enjoy the outdoor way of life, and there is no better time to start than right now. So let's head into the great outdoors with your host, Dylan Ray.
Guys, there's one fabric that if you're not wearing, you absolutely should be. It's a magic fabric. It changes everything about the way you layer, everything about the way you dress, everything about the way you hunt, and that is merino wool. I couldn't even begin to tell you all of the benefits of merino wool, and I'm going to miss some for sure. But guys, whether it's summer or whether it's winter, this is going to keep you cool in the summer. It's moisture wicking. It's going to pull the moisture away from your body, but it's also going to hold your heat in the winter. It is antimicrobial. It doesn't smell. It doesn't hold scent like other fabrics does. So if you're out on a 5-day hunt, you don't have access to a washer, this is not going to hold your scent. It's not going to get stinky and nasty. It's also quick drying. You can hang this up in your tent. You can hang it up on a clothesline. It's going to dry really quick. But the coolest part about merino, in my opinion, is that when it gets wet, it still maintains its warmth properties. So if there's a light rain or a snow and this gets wet, it's still going to keep me warm. There's no itch. It's non-allergenic. It's an amazing fabric. Minus 33. I stumbled upon minus 33 by accident. I was on backcountry.com and they were having a blowout sale. I needed some new merino for a hunt that was coming up. And so I dove in, I bought it. And when I got it, it was the softest, best merino I have ever felt in my entire life. I've not worn anything but minus 33 socks for everyday life, whether I'm hunting, hiking, or just, out for the day. I haven't worn anything but minus 33 socks in over a year and a half. Every single day I'm wearing their underwear. Every single time I'm out hunting, whether it's 100 or whether it's 5, I'm wearing some sort of beanie to cover up my chrome dome and to keep that covered up and warm or cool, if it's in the summer. But also that UV protectant. I like to wear it in the summer. Guys, minus 33 does merino, in my opinion, better than anybody else does it. Go check out minus 33 for all your merino wool. And if you haven't ever tried merino, guys, you are missing out. It will change the way you layer. It will change the way you hunt. Go check out merino wool and go check out minus 33. Well, I was just telling Shane, the first time I met Jim, I was walking, we were at Western Hunt Expo there in Salt Lake, and I was walking by the booth, and I see this glaring face at me from the backdrop of the booth, and I'm like, good Lord, look at that guy right there. I said that he's got a great beard, but man, you should have picked somebody better looking. I think I took a picture of it and sent it to you, didn't I? And said, they should have found somebody better.
You did do that, yeah.
I had to give you a little bit of a hard time.
Find a good Idaho model, I'll tell you.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, everybody's ganging up.
Dude, no, I'm excited. The first Western hunt I ever went on, was in Idaho. Should have picked somewhere easier, but it was in Idaho. And man, I'll tell you, being a Midwestern guy, man, I just ran to Cabela's and I bought a said name of boot, and it was just a cheap, on sale for like $80 boot, and my feet were beat up. Like, it was miserable. I was like, these suck. And it was then I took a deep dive into boots, and I just figured out, man, if you don't take care of your feet, you're probably going to fail. And so I just wanted to have you guys on, talk about boots in general, what you look for in a boot, how to break in boots, how to take care of boots, general feet tips, in the mountains of how to take care of your feet, and how to prioritize your feet. Because if you don't take care of your feet, you're probably going to fail. And that goes into any type of hunting. If you're sitting in a tree stand and it's 5 degrees, if your feet get cold, well, you get cold. So no matter what you're hunting or where you're hunting, feet need to be a priority. So, Jim, let's just start at the very beginning. What do you tell people when they're looking for boots? What do you tell them to look for in a boot?
Well, the main thing when I talk to a customer is, a lot of guys want a boot that does everything. And boy, if I had that boot, I'd be a millionaire by now, by golly.
Yeah.
But there's when I'm talking to a guy, I basically want to find out, okay, let's try to get 80% of and it's in what conditions. There's always going to be the extremes. There's going to be the days that are real warm. There's going to be the days that are real cold. But what is your, I guess I'd say, go-to season? What are your norm temperature ranges? If you're hunting in October in Idaho, I don't wear an insulated boot. I adjust my sock to that, unless I'm getting into later November or December, more of my whitetail hunts or things like that. So then I look more to an insulated boot. So I try to find out what temperature ranges that guy's going to be in for the norm, not the exceptions. And then try to gear a boot towards that need. I personally, I prefer the boot, 6-inch boot for most of my hunting, just because a lot of creek crossings and things like that you're in. Again, that's a personal preference. A lot of guys just like that 6-inch boot. It's a little bit lighter, a little less cumbersome on the feet. But starting off, that's the main thing I want to find out is what conditions they're going to be in, their tolerance for colds. If guy tells me I get cold all the time, well then, yeah, that's a different scenario. Then, yeah, it doesn't hurt to go to a little bit of insulation in your boot. But yeah, I mean, it's just trying to kind of find out, a lot of guys are going to have one boot and that's it for hunting. They can't afford to have the 2 or 3 different style, or different types of boots. And so it's trying to narrow it down, I guess, to their conditions, their tolerances for colds and their conditions what they're hunting in. Now,
I'm anxious to hear your thoughts, Shane, but pretty much everybody I've ever talked to is like, just stay away from insulation. Because talking Western boots, if you will, if you're sitting in a tree stand, yeah, you probably want insulation, but just due to the nature of the hunt, I mean, you're moving around, even if it's, 20 degrees, you're going to be moving enough and generating enough body heat that your feet should stay relatively warm, especially with a good pair of socks on. Shane, do you pretty much always run non-insulated?
Oh, 100%. And Jim's absolutely right. We're on the move out here. There's a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah.
The biggest thing that I look for is support. You got 2 places in Idaho, and it's straight up and straight down, right? So I look for that support, and I'm with Jim on that 100%. Not until about mid-November is when I start putting on either a pack boot if I'm started running hounds or if I'm whitetail hunting, or we got some late season hunts that's, muzzleloader hunts or something like that. But before then, I'm a non-insulated kind of guy, because I'm burning up. I'm definitely burning up, and there's nothing worse than having a sweaty foot and it feels like you're inside of I'm sure you always had on river shoes and you have that moisture up against the sock and it's trying to wick out and you're up against the inside of your shoe. So I prefer to not have blisters, and I think that's a cause of having blisters. Is
Absolutely.
not running, or just being ill prepared, or just don't have the knowledge of the food or the product that you need. So um, I don't know too many guys that run an insulated boot out west.
Yeah.
We're all
Well,
the
and
same
you know
boot.
what? I think so many guys are just like, well, I'll get like a 400. That way it's not too hot, but then it's not, then I can get into the cold a little bit. And I'm like, that will be too hot. I mean, if it's 90 degrees outside and you're running across the side of a mountain, you're going to burn up. And what I've learned, man, is, like last year on that elk hunt, there were a couple mornings it was 20 degrees. And if you have a good pair of Merinos on and a nice boot, your feet will still stay perfectly warm. I found last year, like I said, it was 20 degrees. And by the time you get to the top of the mountain, you still want to unlace your boots and let your feet breathe because they've gotten hot on the way up there. Like, most guys will never hunt cold enough unless, like you said, you're running hounds and there's 7 feet of snow. But at that point, you're going to go away from your mountain boot and put on your pack boots.
Yeah.
So, but I do want to go back. Like my dad was asking me, well, dude, I need a good pair of boots. And, he's almost 60 years old and he's diabetic. And so his feet get freezing cold. And so, he has to have an insulated boot, no matter what. I mean, even if he's running and gunning, his feet are cold. And so, I think with a guy like that, absolutely you go to an insulated boot. But, I just think that for the general guy, if you're going to buy a one pair of boot, do all boot, then don't get an insulated pair of boots.
Yeah. Unless your season, if your main hunting season is November, or like you say, if you're going to be a tree stand hunter or sit in glass for hours, if that's your style of hunting, that's different. But the guys that are out there getting after it, definitely the insulation, I don't think is the way to go if you're looking for that do all one boot.
So Shane, you mentioned something I want to talk about. You mentioned support, and there's been kind of this new rave of dudes just wearing like fast, lightweight tennis shoes in the mountains. Like, I went on that hunt with Waylon. They're from Ace Outfitters last year, and dude was wearing tennis shoes, like, A6 tennis shoes. I don't know what kind of shoes they were, but
dude, was he from the East?
Yeah. No, I don't really though. I was just like, he was just like, man, they're faster, they're lighter, they dry quicker. I don't really want run boots anymore. So what are you looking for as far as stiffness, support? Like, I mean, I know Jim mentioned a 6-inch boot. Do you go higher, lower? For that guy, and we're going to assume that most general guys, like Jim has already alluded to, they can only afford one really good pair of boots. So if that's the case, what are you looking for as far as stability and stiffness and ankle support and all that stuff?
I've always liked comfort over anything, and I felt like that is a key. That's key for me. It's key, and I think for any type of Western hunt, that's key. And I think a lot of folks overthink a lot of things when they come to products, and I try not to do that. Just products in general for hunting, and I've tried everything out there prior to joining up with Jim with Hoffman boots. And the one thing that I have said with everybody that I talk to about with Hoffman boots, when you you got your boots there a few weeks ago, when you put your feet in those boots, they feel like they're already broke in. For me, I feel like when I lace up, I have the support that I need from the way the boot or the lace structure is. That's the support that I like. I've had other boots. We can name several out there, but they're very stiff. And for me to get a sure foot, especially with the rocks, I mean, there's no shortage of rocks here. So anything in the PNW for that matter, to get a sure foot, I like to be able to feel what's on the ground, So that's key for me. And I think that's the that's the difference between that I think with Hoffman boots than the other competitors that's out there. I feel like that boot is already, the comfort is there. It's already had its 100-mile walk in. That's just
Yeah.
how I with the boat.
Yeah. So, Jim, what do you tell people, like, because most guys, when they try boots on, like when I tried your boots on, I was in the middle of the expo, but most guys are going to be in the store, in the shop. They don't have a mountain they can go climb real quick to see if they're comfortable. So what are you telling a guy to look for the moment you try them on? Like if they're in your store, what are the questions you walk through so they know if those are, going to be a good fit for them?
Yeah. Well, to me, the biggest thing on these mountaineering boots is when you're putting them on, like Shane said, there should be a comfort factor there. You should not have to feel like you have to break that boot in. To me, that's not a good recipe to start with. I mean, there's going to be some stiffness there, yes, but there should be an overall comfort off the bat. The biggest component I'm looking for is the length of the boot on the foot. And the best way I have found to do that, and I don't know, most guys that I have fitted up, I do this with, no matter if they tell me the boot fits great or not, I'll pull that insole out of the boot and have them stand on that insole, because that gives me a picture of what's going on inside the boot. That insole is going to butt up against the back of the heel and the toe box. So it's kind of a blueprint of what's happening inside that boot. So unfortunately, many of the guys that I do fit up are over the phone. They're not in my store. We have a good walk-in traffic here, but I'd say still 90% of the guys are boots that we're shipping out. So when we're having that conversation, that's what I do is I tell them, okay, let's pull that insole out, stand up on that insole, put your heel in that heel cup, and tell me how much room's on the end of that boot or into that insole from your toe to the end of the insole. I like to say, put a thumb width down. So if you bend over and put your thumb from the tip of the insole to where your longest toe is, that's about the appropriate fit. Should be a good half inch there. A lot of guys want to fit their boots too short. They like that good, real snug fit. And boy, pretty soon they're going down down a steep hill, whatnot. Bingo. Their toes pecking the end of that boot. Yeah, so you've got to give yourself that room in the toe box. And that's one thing when we developed this boot, was the toe box. We wanted to make sure that we had an adequate room in the toe box. So many European boots really want to taper the toe box in, and it almost gets that fit feel of your toes being crunched together. And that's just the way a lot of them are shaped. And so that's one thing we really went after, is putting a nice toe box into our boot so you don't have that feeling of getting your toes, forced on top of each other. But the biggest thing for me is overall length. You've got to make sure that length is, and a lot of times even a leather boot, when it gets wet and dry, over time, it will contrast just a bit. And your foot actually works forward just a bit into these mountaineering boots. So it's really important to have that length at the end of your boot. That's the biggest thing for me anyway.
So you tell guys about a half inch in front of the longest toe.
No less than a half inch. I use my thumb. I just put a thumb down right at the tip of the insole, and their toe should be on the other side of my thumb. So about a thumb width. That's where I like to see a guy's boot. So
before we move on to just, kind of general feet care in the mountains, if a guy Shane, a guy calls you and says, dude, I need 5 pair of boots. Doesn't matter. Like, I want to build a full system. What kind of system do you run? As far as, early season to late season, if a guy can say, hey, money's no object, I'm going to buy as many boots as I can. What's your full kind of system of boots there?
We're going to sell him one of everything, aren't we, Jim? No. In all honesty, I have 3 favorite boots that I run all year long.
Okay.
I run my 6-inch, and I'm really liking that new Rhino. And I have all the boots, but here's my process of what I do. The 6-inch and the Summits, that's my everyday boot. I wear them all the time. That's what I like to wear. Um, Now for early season, say early season from August into the 1st of October, I'm normally running the Rhinos or the 6-inch Explorer. The reason I like the Rhinos is we got a lot of deadfall here, and those things are absolutely bulletproof. There's, I mean, I don't know. I could probably run over them with a D5 on the track and not hurt them, So going over the deadfall and the rocks and things like that, it's virtually scuff proof, as far as that's concerned. So I like
Yeah.
running those. They are just a touch heavier than the regular 6-inch Explorers, but I don't mind that. I don't mind that at all. And then the only time I run an 8-inch boot is usually if I know that there's forecast or snow in the forecast around elk season. I'll throw in, or I'll throw the 8-inch boot in, and just have that just in case. We do run into some snow up on the timber. That's the only time I usually run the 8-inch. But when it hits November, I usually have my packs on. Those are the three main boats that I run.
So one question that I get is the main differences, or when to run a pack boot compared to like a big muck boot. I've got a pair of pack boots, and usually if I'm sitting in a freezing cold tree stand, I've got muck boots on. But I do get that question a lot, is like, why would you go a pack boot over like a big muck boot? And that's probably more of a Midwestern question rather than, well, I guess the answer will determine that. But I would never wear muck boots in the mountains. So why would somebody go muck boots over pack boots and vice versa?
I'll go ahead and throw a couple 2 cents in there. To me, you can wear a muck boot also if you're, going to go sit in a tree stand, whatever, that type of thing. The biggest advantage of a pack boot is that you can actually cinch the boot up to your leg and basically get a lot more support than you are just a pull-on style boot. And with our Mountaineer boot that has that heavy 9mm felt in it, and the extra insulation that we build into the rubber shell itself, it's a warm boot. It's a really nice boot, and just my opinion, a much more comfortable boot to wear. But yeah, a lot of it comes down to support versus a pull-on style boot like that. So that would be the biggest thing. If you are walking in a mile to a stand or something like that, you're just going to get a. So that would be the biggest thing.
Oh, I agree. Yeah. And the soles on them are a lot better than the pack boot. The soles are a lot better, as far as slippage and digging rain. And I always say that the muck boots are for lazy people.
You're 100% right. Like, I mean, that's a mean way of saying it, but you're 100% right. Like, I tell people, I'm like, listen, if you have any kind of walking to do, you want to go a pack boot. Like, if, even if I'm looking at the Kiamichi Mountains in Oklahoma and I'm going, a mile to a bear stand, I still have elevation that I have to go up and down and over rocks and boulders. But then when I get there, I'm going to sit for 5 hours and be freezing cold. I'm going to wear a pack boot. But if I'm walking, 200 yards from my truck to a stand in Kansas, yeah, I'm going to wear the muck boots because I don't have to worry about, walking. I'm worried about more muddy sludge through the wheat field than I am anything. So that's kind of what I tell people is like, if you're going to be walking at all, go with a pack boot. But if you're going to be, just riding your four wheeler to a stand to sit, wear a muck boot.
In my experience, I've never had on a muck style boot that kept my feet as warm as what a felt line pack boot would be.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me is, I can put on 4 pairs of socks and, throw some stinking hot hands in there or something,
Well,
yeah. And if,
but that's the other for thing with your lazy hunters.
Yeah. The other thing style boot too is that, if you do get to the point where you are perspiring, there's not a whole lot of areas for that perspiration to go to. You get
right.
that clammy feel boot. So with the 9mm felt, when they build those liners, they put a polypropylene inner lining inside that felt. All of our liners come that way anyway. So it does have that moisture absorbency inside the liner. So that is another nice feature as far as trying to keep feet warmer, is just keeping that moisture away from it. So that's something that a muck boot will not do.
Right. Yeah.
Now, the only thing that I will say about a muck boot, and you guys can take this or leave it. If I'm going to my tree stand in Kansas and I don't have a lot of walking, it's going to be easy. It's flat ground across a wheat field. That rubber's not going to hold scent. So I can, wipe those off with a rag, a dead downwind rag or something. And that rubber's not going to hold any scent, but leather will hold scent. So that's a thing to think about when you're whitetail hunting and you don't have to worry about walking a lot. That's a reason that I go with a muck boot, because that rubber won't hold scent like leather will.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you make a point, but there are a lot of the muck style boots does have the fabric on them now. It's hard to even get a whole pure rubber boot. And I have normally what I do with the leather is, I don't know, there's a lot of guys that, disagree with it or whatever, but I mean, I don't ever show these type of things, but on the leather, and I think, and it's, Jim may even have some knowledge with this as well, but I put down rendered bear fat on mine. So, that
really?
Pretty much solidifies any absorbency that's coming into my leather. So I put that on, and also I don't know to what degree that, and that's a question for Jim with their boot dressing also. So I was actually trying to dissect some of that yesterday, Jim, is like comparing rendered bear fat compared to your boot dressing. So
yeah. I don't know a lot about bear fat, how that works compared to like a product that we use. Basically it's a product by Obenoffs that we use on all of our boots. It's private labeled for us, but all natural type elements in that dressing. There's no petroleum base, and that's one thing I really try to tell people to shy away from, is anything that has a petroleum base to it, just because, not necessarily on a pack boot, but any of your mountaineering boots, any petroleum base is really hard on the waterproof booties. So you really got to be careful putting that on waterproof footwear. So, but yeah, bear fat, I don't know. We'll have to throw some in a can and try to sell it. I don't know. So
you got to kill bears to have bear fat first. That's my problem. I'm looking at this thinking, well, I can't kill any stinking bears. Do what?
Yeah.
I got plenty in the freezer.
All right, send me some, because I can't kill any myself. So, so boot care. What do you tell guys? How often should they treat boots? How should they treat boots? Is it once a year? Is it how often do you tell people to treat their boots, and what to look? How do you know that it's time to recondition that leather?
Yeah, to me, it's more of a feel thing. When you're feeling the leather on a boot, when you first buy a mountaineering style boot or even a pack boot, you'll feel a little bit of that oil content in the leather. It's not a dry leather, so you can actually feel that. But when that starts going away, and it's pretty easy if you're just rubbing your thumb on that or whatnot, it kind of gets almost a scratchy feel to that leather. It's drying out. You can actually visually see it. But I've been a boot guy all my life, and I basically will I'll put dressing on my boots before hunting season. I'll wear them to 3 months, put them on when I'm done, and I put my boots away. For the most part, there's a couple I wear year round, but for my taller boots or cold weather boots, that's what I do anyway. So twice a year is usually pretty adequate, unless you're using that boot like Shane. He's out in the mountains darn near every day, so. That's a different case scenario. You want to keep some more dressing on that. The biggest thing I can tell you is the number one enemy of any type of these mountaineering boots is heat. You know, a lot of guys at the end of the day want to put their feet by the fire or things like that. And these Rands that they put on this type of boots, or these soles that have the PU midsoles, the polyurethane midsoles, heat's terrible on that stuff. You know, those glues are reactivated around 130 degrees. So, all these, not just our boot, you know, all these mountaineering boots that have these Rands on there, they're all put on the same way. So heat's the number one enemy of any of that stuff. And actually shrinking of the boot also will be caused by heat. So boot dryers are great, but putting them by a fire or next to a wood stove, things like that, boy, that's the number one thing a guy's got to watch for on this kind of stuff. So you can ruin up a $400 pair of boots in a hurry. So it's a good point.
I saw a picture of a guy, and his boots were sitting right by the wood burner, and I'm like, no, like I'm like an inch from it, and I'm like, oh, dude, What are you doing?
Yeah. No, and you can typically tell, you know, when a guy will get a pair of boots back in, and the Rands come loose on them, but it's both boots, and it's right in the front of the boot, you know, where they've had it sitting right by a fire. It's pretty evident when the boot gets hot. You know, you can kind of, there's characteristics you look for in the glues when they come in. And the guy, I just had them by a fire for an hour. And I'm like, well, that was like 55 minutes too long, you know? So you know, we can fix the Rands, but it's just something a person has to watch out, especially if you're out for a week or two out hunting and not coming back in. And, you know, you got the one or two sets of boots there, and you're counting on those boots for your hunt, you know, for the full week. You don't want to screw them up when you're out there. So that's just something, you know, guy gets back, wants to grab a beer, sit by the fire, and put your feet up, you know, and they just really got to be careful for that.
Yeah.
Good point, Jim.
I just can't stress the importance enough of taking care of your feet. And it's everyday life. We went to the Grand Canyon not too long ago, and we hiked all the way to the bottom, all the way to the top. And, you know, I had my 4-year-old on my back a lot of the time. And I get to the top, and luckily I had bought my wife a good pair of boots before we left. And, but, you know, we were with other people, and their feet are killing them. Their backs are hurting. They're exhausted. They're, you know, and here my little wife sits, and this was the first time really she'd ever worn a good pair of boots. And she ran up the Grand Canyon, you know, and just, she was like, man, this is incredible. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, people don't get how important it is to take care of your feet and the difference that a good quality pair of boots make. And that's why I tell everybody, and Shane knows, I mean, you know, I get to go out west once a year, maybe twice a year if I get to spring bear hunt. But I tell everybody the first thing that you should invest in is boots. Like, if you are just now getting into Western hunting and you think, well, good Lord, I got to buy a tent, and I got to buy a backpack, and I got to buy boots and trekking poles and water bladders and water filtration systems and all this stuff. The very first thing that you should invest money into is a good quality pair of boots, because if you don't take care of your feet, you will fail. And that's how it goes, man. And then I tell them a backpack, but your feet should be a priority always.
Oh, 100% agree. I mean, that's, if anything's shut you down out there when you're out hunting or you're out in the backwoods somewhere, your feet are hurting, and you know, you're done. You know, the rest of the body can be fine, but your feet are your foundation, you know, of everything else you do. And that's when you get to that point of hiking out of that Grand Canyon area, the difference of quality of having a mountaineering boot that actually has the nylon midsoles, the support systems. You know, when you think of a boot that flexes really easy, like a tennis shoe, like you were mentioning earlier, every time that boot flexes, your feet, every joint in your foot is flexing, all your ligaments, everything from your foot to your calf up to your knee. When you get these mountaineering style boots on that don't flex as easy, that actually have a proper rocker system built into these, so when you're taking that step, your foot's on that platform, that solid platform, the boot's working, the boot is flexing the way it should or rolling the way it should, but your foot's not. So all that fatigue that goes into a shoe that flexes constantly, that pounding it takes versus a boot that's sitting on a platform where the boot's actually working and not the foot. That's the difference between a high quality boot and a boot that's mediocre that flexes too easy. So that's what you're buying when you're stepping up to buying a high-end mountaineering boot. You're buying the rocker system, you're buying the platform that's built on, the nylon midsoles they're built on, and just the overall quality of the boot versus something that's not that. So that's the step up you're taking when you get into these higher end mountaineering boots.
So what is a rocker system? And then B,
So,
a lot of these boot companies have a different stiffness level, so they can go 0 to 5. So depending on what the guy wants, he can say, I need a 4 or whatever. Where does your stiffness fall into that? Because you don't have the system. It's, this is your boot. And I think, as far as, if I'm wrong, Shane, I apologize, but I think you told me all of the soles are the same in all the boots, right?
Well, you got different treads, right, Jim? But they're all vibrant.
yeah, they're okay. I'll just answer a few questions there as we go down here. So, the rocker system. So what the rocker system is when you build a boot that's stiff, and when you're walking, that boot is so stiff, your heel, as you go from the heel strike to the front of the foot, your heel wants to pull up, correct? As you're walking, your heel comes
right
up. So what that rocker system does is when you take that heel strike and start coming forward, it basically lifts the back of the boot up with your foot. It's just a roll feel. So like when you're walking, and you guys have got the boots, you can kind of feel almost that push from behind almost as you go forward. That's the rocker system. It basically enables that heel to come up with your heel as you step. If not, you get what's called heel bite. A lot of guys will talk about, geez, the back of my heels are killing me, That's not the right rocker system. That boot, you're fighting that boot. Your heel's wanting to pull up. That boot's so stiff that it's not rocking right. So basically your heel's pulling up in that boot and you get that friction point in the back of the heel. To avoid that, that boot has to roll or rock, what they call a rocker system. It has to come up as your foot's going forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's what they call by the rocker system, the way that boot makes the transition from toe to heel up. And it should almost feel like I say, almost someone behind you giving you a little bit of a push from behind. That's that transition of that boot breaking and lifting. So that's what the rocker system is. As far as stiffness goes, all the stiffness is controlled by the nylon midsole that's inside the boot. And you're saying, what's a nylon midsole? It's basically, it looks like an insole. It runs from the heel to the toe. It comes in various thicknesses, so you can control the stiffness of the boot by that. You have some brands that will tout a 7 mil nylon midsole, very, very stiff nylon midsole, not a lot of flex to it. You can go down to a 3 or 4 that some other companies use, and that boot's going to have a lot more flex in it. So the higher the number, the more stiffness. So you'll start with a 1 and you'll end at a 7. So that's the range. When we built our nylon midsoles, we kind of went for that combination where I don't want a boot that's too stiff. Matter of fact, the first boots we built all had 7 mil nylon midsoles, the heaviest in them. I didn't like them. I kept getting that heel bite in the back because it was so stiff that I couldn't get my heel to come up with the boot. So we built the nylon midsole that has a 7 mil towards the back of it, but then transitions down to a 5. So it does have a little bit of flex in the ball of the foot. Still plenty of lateral stability, but it does have some of that flex in there. So we use that in all of our boots that we do right now. It's just, to me, it's the perfect amount of flex, yet enough lateral stability and stiffness where a guy gets the support that he needs. So that's kind of what the nylon, that's how you get the stiffness of the boot. It's just those nylon plates that are inside the boot.
So with take a guy from the Midwest. He's getting his first pair of good mountain boots. Really, if you put on any good mountain boots, they're going to feel stiff. If you've never worn them before, if you've always worn tennis shoes and muck boots and Crocs, they're going to feel stiff. So how does a guy know this is going to be stiff enough and it's not going to be too stiff? Like, what are they looking for to feel, yeah, when I get into the mountains, I'm going to like this?
Yeah. And that's, the hardest fitting. Everybody's different. Everybody has something they're looking for in a boot. The biggest thing I tell guys is when they come into like our booths at some of our hunting shows or whatnot, I've told many guys that I'll put on a boot. I just tell them to go walk around a couple rows, walk around the show a little bit and bring them back, and I've never had an issue with someone just taking off with them, thankfully, but that boot, when you're walking around that show, it shouldn't hurt your feet. It should feel good on, and if they come back and say, this really is hurting this area or this doesn't feel right, that's not the right boot. It's not going to get better when you're in the mountains. So the best thing I can do is, tell a guy, get a pair of boots, wear them around the house. If I'm shipping them to him, wear them around the house, go up and down the stairs, move around them, keep them inside because I don't want them, we can't send out every boot, have guys wear them for a month or two and send them back. That's a pretty hard way to run a business. But, usually it's pretty easy to tell right off the bat that stiffness of that boot's going to feel, go up and down some stairs. It's just, to me, if you're not used to wearing a stiff boot, you want to get something that has a little bit of flex in it and not go too stiff on the nylon midsole. So,
oh yeah, well, to just with what Jim was saying from that 7 to 5, I'm there's a lot of guys that get on and they'll read about the forums and things like that with boots, and I think a lot of guys that don't know will read those, and there's a couple boot companies out there, like they got their name from rock climbing. That's where their boots come from, is rock climbing and stuff, and they'll get that stiffness trying to get the point of their toe into a crevice or something like that, and then automatically they think that that's the type of boot that they need because they see that these guys is doing these extreme packing out, or what I should say, a rock climbing, and then they'll think that. And when Jim, what you were saying is you got the mountaineer boot, which is completely two different style hunting boots, right? Well, because one really wasn't designed for a hunting boot, and yours is specifically designed, for trekking these mountains, not only for hunting, but to go on some of these trails and the terrain that we have here that's giving you the comfort that some of the other boots really, they're not comfortable at all. I think they have one design and purpose, and that was what I just mentioned, doing some really extreme rock climbing and things like that where you need that stiff footprint.
Yeah. I just want to make note that, throughout this conversation, try on a bunch of different boots and find what works best for you. Obviously, Shane loves Hoffman. I have fallen in love with mine. Jim asked me if you got to try them out, and I said yes. I go to my local, the dam here in my town is just 2 minutes away, and so I go every morning and walk the dam. And, I go up, down, side hill, and I found those boots to be very, very comfortable. I went out and spent 6 or 8 hours coyote hunting and in them and found that they were very comfortable. But not all boots are going to work the same for everybody. Your feet may just be different. They might like something different. They might be wider, narrower, longer, whatever. So try on a bunch of different boots. But one of the worst things you can do, Shane mentioned, a forum and reading forums and saying, well, everybody's saying that boot X is the best boot. Well, you might drop $500 on that boot and realize this thing is garbage for me. I'm not saying it's a bad boot, but it just doesn't work for my foot. And I fell into that. The first year I told you I bought a good pair of boots. I did that. I'm like, well, let's just find the best boots and let's buy them. And I'm sitting here thinking, man, everybody said these boots are great. They hurt my feet miserably. Well, they just didn't work for my feet. So find what's going to work well for your foot. Find what you like. And that's what you should wear. Because again, if you're not comfortable out there, here's the issue. I say if you don't take care of your feet, you're going to fail. Can you still kill animals? Yes. But there's a big difference in, man, my feet hurt. Let's go up that next ridge. And man, my feet feel great can't wait to get to that next ridge. That plays a massive difference. And my feet hurt, but I haven't punched my tag yet. Do we want to stay for a couple extra days? Or my feet feel great. I can go on as long as we have the chance to, so you'll stay longer, you'll go further, you'll be more comfortable. You'll be, if my mind is on the elk rather than on my feet, I'll be more successful. So just think about those things and let those play into your decision.
Right.
Guys, I oftentimes say that I always have a binocular harness on my chest. What good is a binocular harness without a good set of binoculars? I am a sucker for fine Japanese glass. I love good optics. I love spending time behind it. It's just fun. It's fun to go out and look at stuff, but also good optics make spotting and looking through them a whole lot more enjoyable. Kowa Optics does it and does it better than anyone else, in my opinion. They have some of the finest Japanese glass on planet Earth. It's all I've used for the past, 8 years or so. This right here, the Kowa 55, is one of the best products ever made in the history of the universe. It is the smallest, most compact scope you can get, but it still offers phenomenal glass. It's really hard to find a spotter that is this small, this light, this compact. You can throw it in your backpack. You can leave it in your truck. It's so small and so compact, but it still offers phenomenal glass. This is one of my favorite products ever. Guys, if you're in the market for new optics, I would highly encourage you to check out Kowa Optics because they are, in my opinion, the best glass that you can buy. Go check them out.
I would say I'll add to that too, as far as for the sportsmen's out there right now, we're at a time where there are some great boot companies out there. There are some great choices, and I'll throw, a Crispy or a Kinatrek or a Sneeze or a Loa. There's some really good footwear out there, but you hit it right on the head. You've got to try things on that are going to, my boot's not going to fit everybody. I know that, and I'm good with that, but it's definitely worth trying. It is, I think, one of the better fitting boots out there. That being said, it might not work for everybody, but the good thing is, we got a lot of good choices out there, and it's a good time. Yeah, 100. We didn't have that long, so there's a lot of companies out there now.
And I'm a big believer in that. This is Bear Archery's podcast, but you might prefer a different bow over Bear, and that's fine. I mean, if you like something better, if something shoots better for you, then by all means shoot that. I mean, if a pair of boots fit you better, that's fine. I mean, if a pair of clothing fits you better, that's fine. I mean, find what works best for you, and that's what you should use. I'll tell you my appeal to Hoffman. They're smaller. In terms of company, so the quality is better in my opinion. Because I told Jim this when I walked into the booth. I used to wear another company's boots, and I'd wear a 10 wide for 2 years, and then I'd get another pair of 10 wides, and they fit completely different. And I'm like, this is not even close to the same size of boot. It's just different. It doesn't, and so with Hoffman. Do you build each individual pair of boot?
Not the Explorer boots. Now the pack boots, all our packs and everything. Yeah, we make right here in the building I'm in right now. I'm out in the warehouse right now, but a little quieter in here. Not so much pounding going on, but yeah. So all the packs we do here, our leather line boots are all Italian built. They all come out of Italy, out of a factory. All of our patterns, all of our designs, like I was mentioning, the toe box, things like that, things that we incorporated into how we want that boot to perform. That's all of us, but we don't build that boot here. But pack boots, yes. And then, of course, some of the guys out there will know us in the lineman industry, the log industry. We do a lot of that kind of footwear here also. So cool. Kind of a wide variety we do, but those boots, I'll tell you, the Europeans, that you get to the Italian region or the German region, there's some great footwear being built over there, and that's where basically everybody that I mentioned earlier, that's where everybody is at. It has their name on it, but they're not building them here. All coming.
Well, and now that you said that, like, I grew up, everybody knew Danner or something like that. I grew up, because that's what my dad wore. So I put on Danners, or something. But it wasn't until I got, in my mid-20s where I could afford things on my own. I'm like, these things are garbage, man. They hurt my feet, so, or the old, there's things that you do, you're like, what in the hell was I doing wearing these things? I didn't know any better. That's what I was taught. That's what my dad wore. And being so close, Danner's just a couple hours to the west of us. So that's what was convenient. And then, you're like, holy cow, we have actually a good pair of mountaineering boots. Your feet know the difference. That's for sure. You'll know.
100%.
From wearing garbage to wearing something that is really good for your feet and the activity that you're doing. And like you mentioned, Jim, like you guys do a ton with the linemen's and in the logging industry, and you will not find a logger out here that's wearing a pair of garbage boots. I can tell you that right now. He's just
yeah. Well, I wrote an article one time about the quality of boots, and the headline of the article was, I basically had no idea how common of a thing hot spots and blizzard had become in my life. Like, you just think, well, that's just how it is. Like, that's how hunting is. But then you get a good pair of boots and you're like, this is what I've been missing. Like, you mean to tell me my feet don't have to hurt? They don't have to have blisters. They don't have to have hot spots. Like, what?
Yeah. It always kills me when people tell me, oh, once I get a callus built up, then it's okay.
Oh, yeah.
Like, wait here.
So you just have to suffer for however long.
That's funny. Once I get a callus. Yeah. I've done an investment small percentage of my life savings in the moleskin. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny, right there.
Shane, what's that big foot failure you have in the mountains? Like, I'll tell you mine while you think of a good one. But I was in Idaho in I think it was 18, and I was wearing just a standard, buy it a Cabela's pair of boots, and my feet hurt so bad that we were headed into town. There was a town it was Atlanta, Idaho. Shout out to Atlanta, all 10 of you there. We were headed into Atlanta. There was a little burger joint. We could get a burger, a hot meal, and head back out and hunt. Had I had a good pair of boots that were comfortable, I would have kept them on. But I was like, praise God, I get a break. So I'm going to put on my little sandals. So I threw on some like Under Armour slides to go to this mountain town to eat a burger. So we eat a burger and we're headed back, and we're still like 2 hours from camp, and we see a bear, and my buddies are like, yeah, let's get out and go kill it. And I'm like, I look down at my feet and I'm wearing Under Armour slides, and I'm like, crap. And so we go for like 100 yards, and then I'm like, this is not going to work. Like, I'm going to either have to go barefoot or I'm not going to kill this bear. And so my little redneck Arkansas self takes off the slides, and I put a stalk on this bear for 1.5 miles in Idaho barefooted. My feet were cut up. They were bloody. They were disgusting. And then I get 200 yards from the bear and miss. So I did all that just to miss. But I was thinking back, and everybody's like, oh, that bear caught you with your pants down. You should have had your boots with you. And I'm like, but I didn't have my boots with me because they were uncomfortable, because they hurt my feet. Like, had I had a good pair of boots, I would have had no problem continuing to wear those boots into town to get a burger. But I didn't have them on because they hurt. So that's my boot failure. That's when I get home and I threw those boots away and I said, I'm investing in good boots.
There you go.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've already said mine. I kind of a little spoiled to that, just of growing up out here. But it's one of those things where I just said, the boot failure was growing up and not knowing any better, and then realizing, hey, I need to I need to spend the money and not be such a tightwad, when I was 20 and figuring out, or, 19, 20, whatever it was, and figuring out that you need good products, so
Yeah.
from there on out,
Well,
not been that way.
The thing for me is like, why spend $5,000 to go on a guided elk hunt and just be miserable the whole time? Like, you're going to spend $5,000 on an elk hunt, but you can't spend $350 on a pair of boots like that will literally last you the rest of your life. That's just crazy to me. Like, you spend all this money on bows and camo and, the hunt itself and the tags and the travel just to get there and have miserable feet. That doesn't make sense to me.
Well, yeah. Oh, I agree with that. I think each one of those, each one of your products in your toolbox is one's just as important as the other. So if your feet are failing, you're not going to be able to get that shot. If your scope's failing, you're not going to be able to pull that trigger. Same way with anything that you have. If you don't, or camo, even though you don't need camo, but the camo companies that's out there just producing the clothing keeps you warm, keeps you dry, keeps you comfortable. So, you have that. If you have that ability to be comfortable, then it's senseless not to.
Yeah, absolutely. So, gentlemen, I ask each one of my guests, what's a hunting 101 field note that the listener can take and make themselves a better hunter with? So I want to keep this kind of feet specific and how to take care of your feet, or tips and tricks on the mountains. I know Shane mentioned moleskin. That's a good tip to always have a little bit with you. Mine, I'm going to share, would be merino wool socks. It pulls that moisture away from your feet, just like Jim was talking about. The problem with muck boots is that moisture has nowhere to go, so it stays on your feet. If you throw a good pair of merino on, especially in the mountains, it's going to pull that moisture away from your feet and not create hot spots and blisters as easily. So when you take a good pair of boots and you put a good pair of socks underneath it, your feet will be thankful. That's my tip, at least. What do you guys got for us?
Well, I think we touched on it here too, as far as if you're looking for a high-end boot, try a few different on. I mean, don't settle with the first, don't just because Joe Blow over here has got this boot on and he says it's the best, that it's the best for you. That's not the case. So, try a few boots on, make sure the boot's comfortable to start. Don't think it's going to get magically better as you wear it. To me, that's a losing position. And like you hit on, we're a smaller company, and there's goods and bads to that. Yeah. Would you like to sell more product? Yeah. But is it nice to be able to pay attention to detail the way we do?
Exactly.
And service the way we do? I think there's a lot to be said about that also. So, you won't see me advertising all over the place and every magazine out there or everything. I love word of mouth growth. That to me is the best, and that's the way we built our business. So, give us a try. Have us on the radar anyway. That's all we ask. So,
well, and that's how I knew like these boots are solid, because it's not, like you said, you're not going to see them in every magazine you look in. However, I hear Shane raving about them, and then I was at Western and I'm walking by, and my friend Zach from Alaska Guy Creations is rocking them, and I'm like, dude, do you like those? He's like, dude, oh my gosh, yes, I just got them, but they're phenomenal, and I had began hearing about them more and more from people who, quite frankly, they had nothing to gain from me trying them on. They just were passionate about the boots they were wearing, and that's when I said, dude, I got to go try these. So I marched myself right over to your booth and tried them on, and it was perfect. I mean, they're super comfortable. They're built really high quality. And so I'm really glad I did, but yeah. Shane, what do you got for us?
And I'm going to keep it simple. I've tried everything else. There's a reason why I'm still wearing them. So
there you go.
Until Jim fires me.
Simple kind of man. It's coming.
Then I'm not
It's
I'll have to wear Darren's again.
going back to the old cheap boots.
Yeah. like you said, you can't fire the best beard in the business, man. So
yeah, that's true.
You guys,
that's the only reason you're still here is that beard. That's what.
Cut my beard off.
That.
I must have really made that.
I wouldn't cut it off. Then we'll have to see your face.
Listen, there's a reason why I have a beard, and the entire time we celebrated our 10th year anniversary there the other week, and there's been like 2 times the entire time that that we've been together, even several years before we got married, but she's only seen me clean shaven, twice, and that's it. I have the huge. I mean, I got the Grand Canyon for a cleft chin. Okay, so I should say Hell's Canyon. I got Hell's Canyon for a cleft chin. Yeah, it's
That's funny.
Yeah.
I did want to share another tip though. I am a massive fan of Crocs, and I think anytime you go to the mountains, and just last year in Idaho, perfect example. I've got a pair of Crocs strapped to my backpack, and just for wearing around camp, or you get back and you do want to sit by the fire. Perfect example is sitting by a fire, and you don't want to throw your feet up with those boots on by a fire. You'll mess your boot up. But creek crossing and taking a bath in the creek and all that stuff. I think. Dude, they weigh like nothing, so it's not like you're strapping on a whole bunch of extra weight to your bag. But to strap those onto your pack, they're super, super useful in the mountains.
Well, I don't know. They're too progressive for me, so they won't get any more.
Oh yeah,
yeah, they're like Bud Light. Come on, guy. Come on.
I will say this: my heavily Southern Bible believing Christian mother sent me a picture of an ad that Crocs put out, and she said, "I better never see you wear these again." And I'm like,
"There you go.
Okay, you got it, Mom." Mother knows best. No, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on. Shane, I do want to mention the podcast now. You can watch every video episode on Carbon TV, which is also where the Bone Maniac lives. So head over to Carbon TV. When you get tired of looking at my face, you can head over and watch Shane kill stuff, because he kills a lot of stuff. Shane, where else can they find you at?
That's it. Exclusively only on Carbon TV anymore. That's where I'll stay. So we don't do too much on YouTube or anything like that. But everybody and the brothers over there. So we just keep everything exclusive. Yep. And the gang over there. So we're happy. We're happy to be right there.
Right on.
And Jim, where can they find Hoffman boots at?
Yeah. Best thing to do is go to our site, hoffmanboots.com. Getting more and more places carrying our boots. We just actually, for the guys out west, we just signed our first agreement with Shields in Missoula. So they're going to start, they've had enough requests for our products where they contacted us a couple weeks back even. But a few other distributors throughout. But if you ever want to know what's close to you, you can always give us a call, or just go to our website. And we'd be happy to work with you. That's one thing. When you call us, you're gonna either probably talk to my sisters in the office. It's going to be a family member or someone that's been here at least 15 years. They know the products very well.
Very cool.
You're not getting some random doesn't know what's going on. So, yeah. So either way.
So will that be just the Shields in Missoula or all the Shields?
The Shields in Missoula is going to be the first place that has them. And how it kind of works is they'll be the first testing ground, I guess you would say. And if they do well there, they'll definitely be expanding out to other locations. So
very cool.
Yeah, we'll see what. Yeah.
Well, tell them you want to be in the Wichita,
40.
Kansas Shields. We need good boots.
There you go. There you go.
Well, guys,
Maybe make a
thank you so
phone
much
call
for
for
coming on. I will. I actually do know somebody. My longtime bow tech just made a post saying he was shutting up shop because he was going to be the new so-and-so at the Wichita Shields. So it hadn't opened yet,
There
but
you go.
I do know somebody over there. So I'm very picky about the nonprofits that I will support. I look into them a lot. I don't just jump in and support anybody that says we're a nonprofit. I met a friend of mine. His name is Jim Mesh, and he runs a memorial fund, a scholarship in his brother's name, the John V. Mesh Memorial Scholarship. And what they do, they have a passion for getting kids involved in outdoors. So they host these events around the country to get kids introduced to hunting, but also to raise money for their scholarship fund, which is the John V. Mesh Scholarship. And what that is that's a scholarship that if any student is going into a field of conservation study, they can apply for this scholarship. And it's a substantial scholarship. That's another thing. If they say we're a nonprofit and we do all this and then they give, $1,000 scholarship, then you're like, well, where does the rest of the money go? But they give a very substantial scholarship to a student every year looking to go into a conservation field of study. So guys, maybe you are a student and you're studying some field of conservation. I would encourage you to apply for the John V. Mesh Memorial Scholarship. But also, I would encourage you, everybody, to support this nonprofit scholarship fund, whether it's through a one-time donation, a monthly donation, or attending one of their events, or buying one of the things they have on auction at these events. Support a company that's supporting our rights as hunters by furthering our conservation efforts by supporting students who are going into a conservation field of study. Guys, go check out the John V. Mesh Memorial Scholarship at johnvmesh.org. But guys, thanks so much for coming on. Guys, thank you for listening. I hope that you learned something about boots. I hope you learned something about how to care for boots, how to find boots that work for you, how to care for your feet in the mountain. But thank you so much for listening. You guys have a fantastic week.